If you don't know why people absolutely love Wales, well, stay tuned, my friends. We're setting out for a spot of wild camping from the village of Dinesmouthie, which, as you can see, is located beautifully in amongst the mountains here. We were pretty much straight onto the incline with a very steep segment through trees on this walk. Now, that gave us firstly a great view when we got out, and of course, being Wales, there were the obligatory quarrying and heavy industry relics and curiosities that have shaped the landscape around here. And of course, there's that immediate view we had too. So as we approach one of the most scenic locations of a public bench that I've possibly ever seen, you may notice that we've moved from the shaded side of the mountain just over the brow and ironically taken the setting sun and walking up the hill turned it into an artificial sunrise. And you can imagine that suddenly having this incredible orangey glowing environment was particularly re-energising for the final push up to our campsite for the night on Voldinus. The images that you're about to see of the sunset and then the incredible sunrise with cloud inversion in the valleys the following morning are they're just immaculate moments that it's impossible to describe. You can see the footage and these images on screen and get a general taste of what it's like, but when it's utterly surrounding you, and as well, this is an environment that is basically silent. You don't even really hear wildlife up in a lot of these places. It's just impossible to put these things into words and to give you the true all-encompassing perspective and experience. Imagine waking up nice and early before the sunrise and discovering that the incredible sunset scenery that you'd seen of the mountains and valleys the night before had turned into this alien landscape of a white, opaque sea with islands of mountaintops sticking up from the mysterious foam. But poetic language aside, look at this, you've got the sun rays coming up from the rising sun, the sky going through all of the incredible pastel colours of the morning, and like I say, this absolutely incredible fluid sea of cloud that's beneath you. Absolutely amazing. And so it was. We packed up our campsite and set out on what would become about a 7.5 mile mountaintop route. We'll take a closer look at that in just a moment, but I just want to big myself and my friend Stu up here a little bit because we had 15 kilogram rucksacks on for this route, and getting to the top of this little track here, I don't know if I've ever felt like I've been walking up such a steep hill. And it also just so happened to turn out to be the hottest day of the year. And believe me, by the time we were at those trees there, it felt like the hottest day of the year. So this is a surprisingly dramatic little ridge. It didn't seem it when we were camped up across the way from it overnight, but there's a lot of these lovely little opportunities for slightly more dramatic than expected scenery. A little side note on this very small looking waterfall here, at the tail end of summer, Pistol Craig Maesglassa doesn't look too much. However, when it's in full spate, that can unbelievably turn into 160 metres of pure falling water, which I don't know if I'd want to come up here in the conditions to see that, but it would be spectacular. So let's talk about the route. As I say, it was roughly 7.5 miles to the true summit of Maesglassa, which is known as Craig Rhywch. Again, all these are going on screen because of my pronunciation. I just want to note here that yellow segment there was that initial ascent, which we still had all our water supplies and stuff for, which was definitely a bit of time. But look at that blue highlighted segment on the descent. Unbelievably steep. So steep, in fact, you can't actually show it on camera because the hillside simply disappears out of sight below you. You may notice that there isn't much footage from this 7.5 miles we did compared to the campsite and the incredible sunrise and sunset moments, and that's because, well, being out under the sun on an exposed hillside like this, on what turned out to be the hottest day of the year, carrying all the kit, it wasn't the sort of environment you particularly wanted to hang around in, I'll say that much. But it was still an absolutely beautiful and definitely a very memorable walk. Although once we got back to a bit of tarmac with tree covering on either side, I did breathe a small sigh of relief. All in all though, another fantastic trip to the mountains. Beautiful. And now it's time, my friends, for me to sell out a bit. So if you'd like to support the channel and see more of this sort of stuff, please do consider checking out the Patreon or the YouTube channel membership. If you're really interested, I've spent most of the last decade living on canal boats and I've written all sorts of books about that. And you can find a lot more stuff that I do over at sortofinteresting.com. Thank you so much for joining me for this wonderful trip, my friends.